Deer sausage gravy and biscuit. Let's get into this. Now, these are my cheap biscuits or my lazy biscuits, whatever you want to call them. Just going to start by throwing a stick of butter into an 8x8 sheet pan and throwing that in the oven to preheat to 450. And then I combined 3 cups of self-rising flour and a cup of milk. This is going to come together, in a biscuit dough-ish kind of form. Just get everything incorporated here. And then as soon as it's not like super sticky on the outside, it's going to be done. Now be super careful on this next part. This pan will be hot because it just came out of a 450-degree oven, but you can see all the butter's melted, started to brown just a little bit. We're just going to cram all of this dough down into it, edge to edge. Use a rubber spatula if it helps and you don't want to burn your fingertips. And then when you get everything covered, you can go ahead and score your biscuits like you normally would. Of course, they're going to be square unless you somehow have some kind of magic that's allowing you to make shapes that are not square in a square dish like this. As you can see, the butter is going to roll out to the top of these and they're going to be completely covered, and we're going to bake them for 15 to 18 minutes. Now, onto this sausage. A long time ago, we got some deer sausage made up, and I was not a big fan of it. It does not make patties really well because there's just not enough fat in it. So, knowing that, I went ahead and threw in a teaspoon of bacon grease as I was scrambling this up. And when it was fully cooked, I did test it for seasoning. I did wind up adding a little bit of salt and some sage just to give it that real breakfasty kind of taste, you know what I'm saying? And then I noticed that there still was not going to be enough grease to make gravy. So I threw in another teaspoon or so, somewhere in there, and then allowed that to cook just a little bit, and then went with equal parts flour, 3 to 4 teaspoons. Let that cook all the way through, a minute or so, and then we are going to add our milk. Now, this is where the real feel of cooking comes into play. I'm sure there's some scientific way to figure out exactly how much milk you need to add, but I don't know what that is. So you just slowly start adding milk, bring it to a boil. It's going to thicken as it boils because of the flour that's in there. It's also going to thicken once you take it off the heat. So keep that in mind. What I like to do is just make it, let's say, 10% thinner than what I want my end product to be. And then by the time it comes off the stove and kind of settles down, it should be perfect. Like I said, it will come to a boil. You don't have to cook it like super long because the flour's already cooked, just enough to kind of incorporate everything. I would say a minute on a boil is plenty. But at any rate, yeah, gravy's pretty simple, and I think people overcomplicate that. And I think people overcomplicate biscuits, but everything here is pretty simple if you halfway know what you're doing. End rant. Anyway, back to the important stuff. Was this as good as pork breakfast sausage? Absolutely not. Was it the best deer breakfast sausage I've ever eaten? Yeah, I'd say so. It's which I may have a bias because I love gravy and biscuit. And speaking of which, we probably ought to get those out of the oven now. But it was as perfect as you could get with it not being pork. I mean, I love pork. It's probably my favorite animal to eat. Sorry, PETA, vegans, vegetarians, but you're wrong. At any rate, these biscuits, like I said, they're super easy, super lazy, cheap biscuits, but they come out perfect, absolutely buttery because they've just been like soaked bottom to top in butter as they cook. And yeah, this gravy, it was the consistency of gravy. It tasted kind of like gravy, closer to some SOS if I got some military people out there that know what I'm talking about. And yeah, other than that, super easy recipe because it's gravy and biscuit. Like, it's great. Um, Appreciate y'all watching. Thanks. And hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed, and subscribe and share. See y'all.